No constraints. We just hang a sign out there, hey, we're open, and we've taken all the locks off the doors. Just go for it. Pros in common would be offsetting the food and beverage losses. Cons would be we lost control of our facility from a resident standpoint. It wouldn't address any of the resident issues other than the ones that food and beverage self-imposed to mitigate some of the problems we've had. And we essentially wouldn't be answering the mail. We wouldn't be providing policies like we were asked to do. Looking at the resident feedback, like I said, we went out and called with an email blast, and also had copies of the front desk, and people could, in lieu of completing the form, email comments. Going Walsh, we got 16% strongly opposed, 6% somewhat opposed, 13% just asked questions. They really didn't form an opinion one way or the other. They were just asking some questions regarding how we would adopt this considering the policy. 44% were in favor, with some reservation. They wanted some of the issues addressed. And 22% were strongly in favor with no caveats of having the clubhouse open for all events. So if you do your math, there's a ratio about 3 to 1. 3 to 1 were in favor of either opening the clubhouse or opening it with some reservations or limitations. 22% were either strongly opposed or somewhat opposed. And if you do the math, some of you are going to do about 101%. That's around about right. Okay. So resident concerns and suggestions included security. They want the security issues addressed. They're concerned about the invasive impact on the clubhouse utilization. They didn't want all the rooms available to residents, outside events. They want the seller to petition off comment that so outside events can use certain rooms. Some wanted to limit the number of events and the frequency of the events. Some wanted to look at a dollar threshold. If an event wasn't earning so much profit, maybe we want to consider it. And there was still some concerns on the damage and the wear and tear of furniture. Scrutinizing the 3 alternatives, the committee voted and approved adopting option number 2, which essentially have outside events but impose some controls. The rationale for selecting that alternative felt it was a win-win for the community. It helps the residents by offsetting some of the food and beverage losses, and it also assists management. Okay. We would impose controls to address the residents and committee members' concerns and issues. And we got the pros significantly outweigh the cons. So in summary, if we adopt this concept of having outside events with limitations, it would be less invasive because we would limit the use of the rooms. We would limit it to the PAC, the restaurant, potentially the Magnolia room or the dressing rooms when they became available. We would continue a revenue source to offset some other expenses. Residents would have priority on the use of the clubhouse on the weekends. And security and safety protocols would be identified and enforced. For the controls, we imposed 10 controls. First one was the clubhouse would not be closed to residents because of an outside event. The pool facilities, golf course would still be open. Outside events would be restricted to minimum space in the clubhouse. So the billiards room and some of the other facilities, like the exercise room, would be off limits to those parties. We still have use of them. Any marketing strategy used to promote outside events must be tasteful and professional. That's not to imply that they are not now, but we just want to establish that as a hard requirement. There would be no commissions or compensation paid to management or staff for booking outside events. Service charges may be collected and paid to management staff that provide those services. Outside events could always be charged enough to cover all the direct and indirect costs of the events. None of them would operate at a loss to average price. Outside events should not cause reduced or restricted staffing for resident events. That meant you can't man load or wait staff in here and have the wait staff who's serving the residents of the bar be shopping at it. We don't want that to happen. Resident events would always have first priority in scheduling of clubhouse facilities. So we would have first come, first served priority on the use of the clubhouse. Outside events could use the clubhouse after it was determined that there was no membership that wanted to use the clubhouse on the weekend. Steps will be taken to ensure safeguarding the property from abuse or misbehavior. Outside events will be responsible for any damages that they cause. And I think that's the current situation now. We wanted just to solidify that. Steps will be taken to ensure that outside traffic is contained and routed to minimize disruption to residents. Any additional manpower required to meet requirements of outside events will be paid for by the outside event. And security and insurance would be adequate controlling unexpected situations. Recommendation to the board was that they take some steps to monitor compliance on a continuing basis. We develop some sort of vehicle to ensure that the limits, conditions that we are to impose are in fact being audited with. What to do next? Board vote on which option to adopt, or if they want to discuss a full adoption, that's fine. Pending that decision, we would formalize the policy and incorporate it into the board policy manual. For those of you who don't know what the board policy manual is, that's just a vehicle to document all the policy the board establishes over time. Management would develop operational policies and procedures to comply with the board policy that we established. And management would have to adjust the wedding agreements or banquet agreements, whatever, to use to factor in the restrictions, conditions, and caveats. The action items would be for the board policy and admin committee to draft policy that coincides with the board decision. Management would develop operational policies and procedures to align with the board policy. And the management adjusts agreements to conform with the policy and procedures. And that concludes my presentation.
Very well done. Beautifully done.
It was a committee. I'm telling you, this committee did this in a short time frame. They did it within 2 weeks. They were one of the most cooperative committees that I've worked with. Can you hear this?
We want to entertain a motion, or does the board want to ask questions of the board?
I'd like to move that the board accept the same recommendation that the committee made. Number 2.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, questions, comments on the part of the board?
Yeah, one question, and thank you once again to the whole committee. This is a very good effort. My question is, you're showing percentages with regard to resident feedback on outside events. How many residents actually provided feedback? I see percentages.
Before or after the cutoff? It was 36, I think, before the cutoff date, and I think there was an additional 9 after the cutoff date. This shows it was 36 by cutoff date. There was an additional 9 comments submitted after the cutoff. This was representative of the 36.
Additional questions or comments on the part of the board?
Yeah, I have a question. I guess I have no problem shutting off the billiard room and the magnolia room, the craft room, all that. I guess my question is, it's a little unclear to me from reading this, where does the bar stand? Is the bar available to outside events or no?
No.
It's not available?
Yeah, by the way, Bob, I saw this when the board saw it, and I want to congratulate the committee. I think you did a wonderful job. I agree with, by the way, most of the things that he said we are already doing, and I think the committee was surprised when we met with management to find out the number of things that we do already. I do have a problem with the bar recommendation, though, for one reason, and hopefully you'll understand this. Most of the weddings we do, and it's weddings, are 150 or less. It's just the nature of the beast in Pasco County. But if we have the opportunity to do a wedding for more than 150 150, let's say 200 or 250, which we've had done that occasionally, we would need to spill over into the lobby and take the main bar, the new bar, for fire and safety departments, because they're only can have 150 people in that restaurant. After that, we physically can't take care of it. So I just want the board to be aware that if you say no, ever, never go into the new bar, that a 250 person wedding makes this community about $12,000. So it doesn't happen much, but I just like to have some flexibility in that. Even if I have to come to the board or go to a committee of the board to get it approved, I'd like to have some flexibility there. If we had an event that large, to just walk away from a 250 person wedding, that's just one day that provides a substantial amount of revenue. And the most sensitivity is in football season, and this year was an aberration with October, November. We could structure that, but usually outside of football season, it's not that big of an issue. We do about $150 in that bar on a Saturday when we don't have an event, resident spending.
Yeah, I guess I'd like to learn a little bit more about, in fact, we're closing off the bar, which is sort of the prime asset that a wedding, a large wedding would be looking at. As even though we're suggesting that we're open for outside events, what impact would closing down the bar have on our ability to sell outside events?
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think when the committee met with the management, I thought the use of portable bars was discussed as an alternative to using the bar.
That's not the problem. We intend to do that. Again, getting back to the number I just used. The restaurant is certified by the fire department for 150 people. When we reach that, we have to expect, and quite frankly, 150 people, you saw 146 people there last Monday night for Italian night. It's packed. So we do the receptions there and the dinner in here. We could do 250, 300, or let's say 250 in here for a wedding. Let's sit down with a dance floor and make it. All I'm saying is that this did not get discussed with the committee. Yes, we're going to intend to use banquet bars in here. Yes, we are looking at ways to close off the bar. Yes, we want to have that bar available to the residents all the time. But all I'm asking is that if, and I don't think this past year we had a wedding for 250, here we 200. If it's 150 or below, which is our average wedding, it's not a problem. The bar can stay open. We do the banquet bars in here. I would just not like the board to put management in a position where if we had a significant wedding, like Kevin said, if there's 250 people, there is no way in the world we could do a cocktail party without it spilling into the lobby and into the new bar, and probably out onto the deck. But we're not talking about the Magnolia room, we're not talking about the billiards room, we're not talking about the craft room. Our goal is to even get out of the Magnolia room, and since the board has approved this bump out, once we get the permit, is to go into these dressing rooms and use those positions in the Magnolia room now for people like bar players that want to play on one side and Mahjong that wants to be on the other, instead of closing up the entire Magnolia room for 3 tables of card players or 4 tables of Mahjong people. But I just like the board, and specifically Bob, you and Val's committee, to have some sensitivity that even if we have to come to, I don't want to have to come to a board meeting because we could lose the event. But if you want to structure something that we need to come to show you a P&L where if we close, we were going to make X amount of dollars on this wedding, to have some vehicle to be able to have the board consider letting us close the bar, especially in the non-football season, like the summer and things like that when a lot of weddings go on.
I guess I have two questions. At what time would the bar be closed to the resident? How long would that be? Would it be just a couple of hours, or would it be during the whole event? That's my first question. Second one's more of a comment. The committee recognized that they would come up with their recommendation and pass their recommendation to the board. We're all aware of the fact that the board has their prerogative, as they are an advisory committee, to change any of our recommendations. So we're well aware. So it's not a committee decision as to the use of the bar. That's a board decision that has to be made. So
Okay.
again, I'm asking the same question. If the bar was to be open to an outside event, how long would that bar not be available to the residents?
If the events start, most of the events start at 5 o'clock, then we'd probably close the bar around 4 just to get ready for the event because people start arriving usually around 4:30. Then the cocktail reception usually starts at 5, much like our own